Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the tank review on the M4A1, and there are various different reasons why it's worth making a tank review about this tank. First of all, it is a tank with various different variants within War Thunder, and with the exception of the Italian, each nation has at least one of them, and so it's also within War Thunder a pretty good tank, especially at battle rating 3.3. Now, I already made a tank review about the Panzer IV F2, showing its strength and weaknesses, and I want to do the same with the M4A1. But before I go into the actual review, I hope you give me some time to talk about the tech tree distribution and also ramble a little bit about the history to get a better understanding of the tank. So within War Thunder, what makes the M4A1 in particular so good in my opinion? Well, it's the gun handling. Turret rotation speed, minus 12 degrees of gun depression, 5.0 second reload for an A screw, good enough ammunition, and also the recent AP buff for the French tanks also profits this tank, backed up by a 50 cal, and the combination of the armor and mobility, which might not be the very best in class, combined with the gun handling and how it overall plays out with the tech tree support and whatnot, makes this tank very easy to use and gives you, not by default, success, but it's not that easy, it's not that difficult to have a decent match, let's put it that way. But the tank is in no way, shape or form completely overpowered. I have to get this out of the system right now before somebody, misunderstands my words, deliberately or not. So, let's have a quick look in the tech tree, and it's the first real medium tank for the Americans that is very nice to use. So the M3 Lee, not everybody likes it, and at 2.7 we also have technically the very first German version with a howitzer, with the 105mm M4 howitzer. It's an M4A3 variant, but from 2.7 we technically start up to a battle rating of 5.7 with the 76mm heavy tank versions, the jumbos. So you can see this tank actually transforms with a better horsepower to ton ratio, with a better gun, and further improvements. And we also have technically the Calliope as a very expensive premium version. And yeah, so various different versions, even in the American tech tree. Then we go to the Germans, which have the rather rare M4748A, which first was available for purchasing yourself or buying yourself into the closed beta of tanks a long time ago. I got mine last October, where 500 packages were offered for the 5 years anniversary of War Thunder. The Russians have a M4A2 premium version with the 76mm variant. The British have actually two of them. The most famous is obviously the Sherman Firefly, very good modification in terms of firepower with a 17-pounder to crack open the Panthers and Shermans. And we also have the Sherman 2, which is very similar to the M4A1 at 3.7. Japan has also an M4A3 76 variant. The Italians currently have none, but my best guess will be that when they get their tech tree, they will get at least one, if not several, versions of the Sherman, and the French also have an M4A1. So this is how the Sherman is distributed across War Thunder. Every nation has practically one or two of them in various different stages of development. And so about the history, the tank has split reviews, whereas tanks such as the Panther have mostly good reputation for their firepower, and they were specifically designed in the anti-tank role. The M4A1 has various different opinions on the same tank, and why that might be explained here. So the M4 Sherman also fought across the world. It fought in the Pacific a little bit with the island hopping, going from island to island with amphibious versions of it. And it also was used in Africa and on the Eastern Front, where it got to the Russians via Lend-Lease program. And, it got distributed to some of the allies of America, so Britain and some other Commonwealth states. I'm not quite sure if Australia also got some, but Canada got some variants. They built their own variant, the Sherman II if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not clear about this, but it really saw a lot of combat in Europe. And the good thing about the Sherman was that it was built reliable. It was mostly easy to fix, it was mechanically reliable, unlike the Germans, which required a lot of maintenance, and if they didn't get their maintenance and were not driven properly, they tended to break down. The Sherman mustn't have this problem because it was produced in America and then got shipped across the Atlantic, where it then actually saw combat. So it had to be sturdy, reliable, and easy to fix, easy to produce in mass and whatnot. So you have to see it under this perspective. Then there were never enough Panthers and Tigers to really threaten the existence of the Sherman in terms of it being very successful in the actual design role, which was infantry support and taking out lightly armored opponents, or not so heavily armored opponents, such as the Panzer IV and Panzer III and its assault gun variants or Stuks, and also the vehicles based on top of those chassis, like the AAA versions or SPA versions. And it has just the right tools to do the job. And within War Thunder, it's some sort of protected by a battle rating. So none of the opponents that you will face, with the exception of course, some of the Russian tanks, T-34 and also the KV-1 are pretty tricky to deal with. But everything else, you do not really have that many problems. So yeah, the bad reputation the tank got from was actually by a lot of people looking at the result, or after the battle they had a look at the battlefields. They saw all the blown up Shermans, they saw all the burned down Shermans and the casualties. But this was down to the nature of the combat. So it had to push the attack. It was the spearhead, and the Germans became really good at setting up ambushes, getting in the shots at long range, and picking the position. The Germans had to push in. No wonder it got a lot of shots before it could return fire, because they just didn't see the enemy, which was concealed, and just waited for the right moment. And the Germans, they had weapons later on in the war, especially, that you couldn't really build a medium tank to withstand that firepower. It began with the rather long-barreled 75mm guns on the Panzer IVs, the Pax, and also the 88 speed mounted on a Tiger or a simple flak position, and also the long 88 on the Tiger II, or again as a pack variant, or hell, even the 128mm on the Sturm Jagdtiger, or even the Sturmtiger with its 380mm mortar. Every tank dies when you throw it against this sort of ambush weaponry. And so I think you have to see the tank in the right circumstances. So without further ado, I think now we begin with the actual tank review. Now, the armor on this tank is nothing really special. We have 50mm, and while it is at a relatively steep angle of up to 64 degrees, and having some overlaps like here where it's 100mm and some additional armor with the with those strange bars, with the 30% interaction rule, just low caliber guns, 50mm and 57mm guns might have a chance to ricochet, but even they will find their way into the tank more than often. And well, it can create some bounces and non-penetrations if an enemy shots you at the wrong place, but you have more some sort of hard points like this overlap here and those bars, then you have really weak spots. Here even SPAs can shoot through the 20mm, those hatches, the driver and the machine gunner. The machine gun port is a weak spot, and even the side armor that bends around the front is an extremely bad weak spot, and if somebody shoots there, they blow you up. The sight in particular, overall, just under 40 millimeters. The turret is a bit better, but you know, the tank is not very well armored at all. There is some overlay on the gun shield and some angles going on, but don't count on your armor. And yeah, we have a little cupola as well. So the tank is, for all intents and purposes, practically on the battlefields of War Thunder with what it faces, paper. And even the Russians with their you know, low penetrating 76mm gun, well, they feature Apc Dc shell that deals very well with angled armor and enters the tank anyway and will blow you up. So that's the armor, don't count on it. But it's not extremely horribly bad and you will die with every single shot that gets sent your direction. But you know, if somebody aims even with a low caliber gun, even 37mm guns will penetrate here and you rarely create a bounce. And you know, this here, Wirbelwind, Ostwind, they will eat you for dinner. X-Ray reveals 5 crew members, 3 of which are in the turret, and the gunner and the commander are on the left hand side, and the driver together with the loader are on the left hand side, right hand side. So the machine gun is commanded by the commander, so you can lose 1 crew member and still have access to it, which helps you quite a lot. The ammunition, well, we have 90 rounds distributed through the entirety of the tank. It's just made and set up to catch the shell that enters your tank. And so a lot of ammunition detonations occur, so you can run with just a third of your ammunition. The tank gets more survivable in certain realms, and you still have enough ammo for a normal battle. Then we have the engine with the transmission in the front, so if somebody shoots you here, the transmission might just absorb a shot and you will lose no crew member. But you know, you shouldn't rely on it. So this is now the tank review. Let's have a look at some of the other stats. As usual, I want to begin then with the mobility, and we can see that 400 horsepower for 30.6 tons. Well, it's the heaviest tank in this comparison, and we have an average horsepower to ton ratio, so it's within the, you know, comparison level of the Chinook and also the Panzer IV and Panzer IIIM. So yeah, their mobility is not the very best, but I think on level ground with 38 km/h top speed, you still can get from A to B, although the stats look very grim in this comparison, especially compared to the M24 Chevy or also to the T-34. But you really have problems with turning because you have no neutral steering, and also the tank is a bit sluggish. So this is a downside, but it's not a crippling downside. The lack of reverse speed with just minus 5 km/h though is. So this is a bit of a bad thing. So the mobility again is just good enough. So now we have to talk about the gun handling and the gun itself, which is the real sweet spot of this tank. Now, I'm not talking about the raw penetration and damage power, to which I will come in a moment, but this 75mm N3 cannon has a lot of things going for it. Again, I want to remind you, you have a very crude version of a stabilizer that helps you especially when braking and wanting to take the shot at an enemy that surprised you, which is a big advantage. Also, you have the second highest ammunition count, just the Panzer IIIM beats you in that a little bit, so just a third of the ammunition is way more good enough. And well, your reload is also the second fastest, joined with the Cromwell, but you know, also just beaten by the Panzer IIIM, which has a smaller gun. But the direct comparison here to the M6 cannon mounted on the M24 Chevy, you have a 1.5 second faster reload. You're also 18% faster with your reload compared to the Panzer IV F2, which a lot of people claim has a faster reload, which is not true. Here are the stats. And you know, you're biting off 2.5 seconds from the T-34 1940 L11. which has 7.1 seconds, so nearly 50% longer reload. So this tells you quite a lot of things. Then let's have a look at the turret rotation. And you beat both the Panzer IV F2 and Panzer III M, but also the Chinook. And while 24 degrees per second is not the fastest here, and you are 1 degree per second slower than the T-34 1940 and the Cromwell, and 6 degrees slower than the MX-13 FL11, you know, 24 degrees per second is certainly nothing to complain about. But then let's have a look at the gun depression. Minus 12 degrees. Just again, the Cromwell can match that, and any other tank is, well, beaten by that. Even the very good gun depression of the Panzer IV F2 and 3M are no match for you, and they are the best for their nation, with the exception of certain tank destroyers, which are very clumsy. But again, you beat the T-34 1940 and also the MX-13 FL11 by a mile, having more than double their gun depression. Gun elevation, just 18 degrees. Again, it's far from crippling, but sometimes when you want to shoot at aircraft, it's a little bit strange. The 4 degrees per second of elevation speed is rather average, so nothing special right there. So now when we talk about the ammunition, we can compare here 4 ammunition shells. And the stock shell is the M72 shot, which is an armor-piercing shot. It has a muzzle velocity of 619 meters per second and offers 110 millimeters of penetration. Now there are several downsides to this shell. First of all, it's a rather slow muzzle velocity. This is due to the gun being more used in the infantry role. But you know, with the introduction of the French tanks, the post-penetration damage effect is not bad, especially if you have a shot from the rear. And if you have a shot from the rear, you can shoot through the engine, set it on fire, disable it, and also still kill the crew, which an APAG shell cannot. Also from the front, if you do not kill all the crew, you still do a lot of damage to the gun breech and still can hit the engine with one shot. So I think currently this is my preferred shell for most situations. The second shell type that I want to present you is a tier 2 upgrade and is the M61 Apc Dc Round, which has a high explosive filler, so it's an APHE shell, and it travels at 618 meters per second, so practically same as the solid shot, and it offers you just 90 millimeters of penetration, but the post-penetration damage effect of course is much better due to it having 63.7 grams of TNT equivalent. The fuse sensitivity is 20 millimeters, so sometimes you have problems with over penetrations, but you know, this is not that often the case. So this is very good for cupola shots, very good for side shots, so finishing off and switching then thanks to the quick reload from the solid shot to the APHE shot. And at longer distances you have your problems with hitting and penetrating your target, again due to the slow muzzle velocity and to the nature of the gun. The third shell type is again the stock HE shell, the M4A1, and it is really slow with the muzzle velocity of 463 meters per second, but it features 666 grams of TNT, and you know, this is good enough to blow up those pesky potato trucks. But 10 millimeters of penetration is for most cases not that good within War Thunder, so you might not use this as a secret shell to blow up KV-1s if you do this shot at the turret front. It doesn't work, and against a lot of the potato trucks, well, you still have your 50 caliber machine gun, but you know, if you don't have it anymore, take a few shots with you. You have enough ammunition capacity to take 3 or 4 of those shells with you. And the fourth ammunition type is the M89 Smoke Shell. Now, the muzzle velocity is really bad, just 259 meters per second, but due to the huge ammunition capacity and the quick rate of fire, you really can smoke up various different places, sniping positions of the enemy to then cross the open field, smoke up an enemy that has pinned you down to then relocate, or making your own, you know, smoke screen to get into a capture zone more or less unseen and unshot. So again, this is great, and it's actually the only source of smoke for the M4A1 because it has no smoke launchers at the moment. Finally, the last stat card here, I promise, we have the ammunition comparison, and we can see no green stats. This tank has nothing really spectacular, but it is again good enough to deal with your opponents on the battlefield. The APHE has 90mm of penetration, which is still better than the T-34 1940 L11, and also, you know, your AP shot is not the very best. It is here under the APCR slot, but you know, if you compare it to the Panzer M or Panzer IV F2, then it's certainly not as good, but the post-penetration damage effect is better. What you lack is the heat shell from the Panzer IV F2, which it actually needs to deal with the potato trucks effectively. You have the 50 caliber for it and still have a okayish HE shell. So it's good enough. It's not spectacular, but good enough. So that's the tank in a nutshell, tank review nutshell. Great gun handling, not the most impressive stats in other aspects like armor and mobility, top speed and whatnot, but it's a very reliable tank. So here we are on the fields of Normandy, and the plan that I have is to go around B and also then go into the low ground and then have my opportunities like usual. This is what I try to do with every other tank as well. And then there is this BT5 or BT7 that I spotted, and I have not quite an idea where he is, but I see a surrounding. Actually try to lob the shots over the ridgeline here. I see him firing, but I aim too high. So I adjust my aim, and it's still too high. So now it dawns on me, a bit down, and there we shoot, and there we have the kill. Again, please notice my ammo selection. It has varied throughout the plays that I did. 25 solid rounds, 10 APHE shots, a few smoke shells, down to your personal preference, and then maybe a few HE shells as well. It depends on the map where you make the most out of which ammunition type. And then we have now where we had a T50. So this is why I love the low ground. Nobody looks here when you flank around, and now I can clean up the mess that is always in B from the enemy team. And here you can see the tank is not extremely slow, it's far from it, but it's not a speed demon either. Again, just good enough. The gun handling, when you drive it yourself, I mean, do a test drive, do just a custom battle, whatever, you will see how good the gun handling itself actually is. And I think this is a very good and solid tank for beginners. It punishes it when you play poorly, but it rewards you if you play good and if you plan ahead. And again, the tank has all the tools that it needs to have. So now, after my team has decided to push into B, which is now empty, I just want to make my journey to A, and I thought that the main combat is around C. I saw a lonesome Panzer III J1, sorry about this, and just ambushed him, and he had no idea that I was there. Again, if you appear in locations that the enemy doesn't expect you, it doesn't really matter in which tank you are. But again, this tank is capable of getting into them. Maybe not in the same way that a Hellcat does, or you know, with the pure firepower of a Panzer IV F2, but it gets the job done. And this is a phrase that you can always hear throughout, you know, documentaries or whatnot, but in the game it actually again feels like this. So I saw that there was actually a tank destroyer And then I see this Puma, and I actually destroyed him with the 50 cal. But now I have to be careful because there was something, I'm not quite sure what it was, but it was on the other side of this little ridge here. And there we go, there it is. Well, there it was, Armada 3. And again, you can destroy them easily with your superior gun handling. Another shell whizzes by, but my allies that pushed with me are clearing up the tanks inside A. And this is what the tank is really good at, you know, pushing up with multiple of them. You just have such a fire density or a shell density. You just have so much going for you with the stabilizer, or you know, with a very crude stabilizer, and just always try to use it. Now here you can see the solid shot that goes through the entirety of the enemy tank, sets the engine on fire, takes it out of commission, and blows up the crew inside as well, or you know, shrapnels it to death. That was actually a Russian premium T3. Now we are capturing A. I try to help my aircraft in the air by shooting at the aircraft of the enemy. But, well, an actual SPA, a dedicated SPA, helps them out. Another shell whizzes by, and I'm just, nope, I just don't want to get shot from a position that I don't see. So while the tank is overall good, or it gets a good verdict from me, that doesn't mean that you just roll out and kill everything. It's how you play that tank, but it certainly has a lot of things going for it. Like for instance also the 50 caliber machine gun. And while I didn't shoot down the Stuka, well, I hit him multiple times, and that should secure me in a lot of cases an additional kill assist, additional spawn points, research points, silver lines. So you can actually use this tank as a very active tank. So please notice where I have positioned myself. And this is now in a ditch near A, having a chance to interfere at C if needed. I'm hiding my hull, and thanks to my 12 degrees of gun depression, I have no difficulties whatsoever to shoot at other parts of the map while my hull is in cover, and I'm a small target and also not that easy to see. Now, did you see that target? I did, and that was actually a transmission hull break on the 4M Gas AAA. So again, quite nice. At this stage I think the gameplay is a bit boring, to be honest, but I think you can see what you can achieve with this tank. And again, don't play it overly aggressive. Let you help from your teammates. Try to change position if needed. There is the Stuka going back to base, and there is another plane coming in. We hit him at least once, and again, we just might get a kill assist on this guy. But again, I reverse here, trying to get my the entirety of my tank into cover, because due to the machine gun fire, I'm giving my position away. At this stage there are not that many players left alive of the enemy team. The plane is coming around for another pass. I'm going even lower into the ditch to get my tank onto a level plane, or on level ground, to have good aim with my machine gun. And finally we get a nice hit in for our 9th kill, and that seems to be a pilot snipe with the 50 cal. And at this stage I thought, well, now it's over, we just have to wait for the time to pass. But there was one player alive that hasn't been killed so far, and he hasn't done too much either. So I'm hanging around in the back, and what the hell is that? Well, he didn't see me either. He could have killed me there, or disabled me and then killed me. And so I get my 10th kill here for the double A's. And soon afterwards the battle, well, was very boring, so this is why I cut it out. And I just show you the results. So 1 plane, 9 tanks, 1 capture zone for 45,800 silver lines and 2,800 research points. We unlocked another camouflage. I got the Survivor Award, which is always very nice. But, you know, this is also something at lower tiers that you can make money with. I also was first in place with 2,419 score points. That's it for me today with the tank review on the M4A1 Sherman. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please give it a like if you did. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know if this is helpful for you to, you know, have a good idea what the tank is about, what the nation's flavor is, because for all intents and purposes the M4A1 is a very typical American tank in terms of gun handling and rate of fire and armor and mobility layout. Very reliable, not the best class in every single respect, but it's a bit more than just a jack of all trades. So that's it for me today, and we'll see each other on the battlefields of War Thunder.